In a distant corner of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of human eyes, an alien race known as the Zorathians prepared for their next conquest. For centuries, they had traveled from star system to star system, enslaving weaker species and stripping planets bare of resources. They were ruthless, efficient, and feared across the cosmos. Their empire stretched across countless light years, and their power seemed unstoppable. Yet, despite their dominance, there was one thing that always gave them pause: uncertainty. And uncertainty was exactly what they felt as they approached Earth. The Zorathian fleet hovered silently in the cold void of space, its ships cloaked in invisibility fields so advanced that even the most sophisticated scanners couldn't detect them. From their vantage point high above Earth's atmosphere, the aliens observed the planet with a mix of curiosity and disdain. To them, Earth was nothing more than a tiny blue speck floating in the vastness of space, a primitive world filled with insignificant creatures who hadn't yet ventured beyond their own moon. It was almost laughable how defenseless humanity appeared, or so they thought. Commander Vrax, leader of the scouting party, stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the holographic display before him. The screen showed detailed scans of Earth's surface, sprawling cities bustling with activity, vast oceans teeming with life, and dense forests stretching endlessly across continents. But what caught his attention wasn't the beauty or diversity of the planet, it was its fragility. There were no orbital defenses, no signs of interstellar travel, not even any attempts at communication with other worlds. Humanity seemed blissfully unaware of the dangers lurking just beyond their skies. "Pathetic," muttered Lieutenant Kale, standing beside Vrax. His voice dripped with contempt as he studied the data. "Look at them. No shields, no weapons capable of reaching us. They're practically begging to be conquered." Vrax nodded slowly, though something about the situation gnawed at him. He had seen many worlds like this before, planets ripe for exploitation, but there was something different about Earth, something off. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but the unease lingered in the back of his mind like a shadow he couldn't shake. "Perhaps," Vrax replied cautiously, his deep voice echoing through the dimly lit chamber. "But we must remain vigilant. Appearances can be deceiving." Kale scoffed, waving a clawed hand dismissively. "What could possibly deceive us? We've scanned every inch of this planet. Their technology is primitive, their military weak. Even their largest weapons wouldn't scratch the hull of our smallest ship. This will be over before they even realize we're here." Despite Kale's confidence, Vrax wasn't convinced. He zoomed in on the hologram, focusing on the skies above Earth. Something about them bothered him. Normally, when approaching a civilized planet, you'd see satellites orbiting, space stations monitoring activity, or at least some form of artificial debris cluttering the atmosphere. But Earth's skies were eerily empty. Not a single object floated above the planet. Not even a stray piece of junk. It was as if someone or something had deliberately cleared the area. "Why are their skies so clean?" Vrax asked aloud, more to himself than anyone else. "Even the most undeveloped civilizations leave traces of their presence in space. But this is unnatural." Kyle shrugged, clearly uninterested in philosophical musings. "Maybe they're too stupid to launch anything into orbit. Either way, it doesn't matter. Once we begin the invasion, they won't have time to think about satellites or anything else." Vrax didn't respond. Instead, he turned his gaze back to the hologram, studying the swirling clouds and shimmering oceans below. Despite Kyle's bravado, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. Was it possible that humanity was hiding something? Or worse, that another force was protecting them? As the hours passed, the Zorathian fleet remained in position, waiting for the signal to attack. Back on Earth, life continued as usual. People went to work, children played in parks, and scientists conducted experiments without the slightest inkling that they were being watched. The aliens marveled at how oblivious humanity seemed, almost as if they lived in a bubble untouched by the rest of the universe. But then, just as the countdown to invasion began, something extraordinary happened. High above the planet, the sky started to change. At first, it was subtle, a faint shimmer like heat waves rising from asphalt on a hot summer day. Then, cracks began to appear, spreading outward like fractures in glass. The Zorathians watched, in stunned silence as massive structures emerged from these fissures materializing out of thin air. "What is this?" Kyle stammered, his earlier arrogance replaced by sheer terror. Vrax didn't answer. He was too busy staring at the impossible sight unfolding before him. Rising from the rifts in the sky were colossal ships unlike anything the Zorathians had ever encountered. Each vessel dwarfed their entire fleet, bristling with weapons and glowing with an ominous energy. These weren't mere spaceships, they were star destroyers, designed for annihilation on a galactic scale. The aliens scrambled to make sense of what they were seeing. How could such primitive beings possess technology so advanced? And why hadn't their scans detected these ships earlier? Panic spread through the ranks as the human fleet formed a perfect defensive perimeter around the planet, blocking any chance of escape. Then came the message, a single transmission broadcast across all frequencies. It was simple, direct, and chilling. "You have entered restricted space. Withdraw immediately or face annihilation." For a moment, there was complete silence aboard the Zorathian flagship. No one dared to speak as the gravity of the situation sank in. Commander Vrax clenched his fists, his mind racing with questions. Who or what was behind this? Were these humans truly responsible for this display of power, or was something else pulling the strings? One thing was certain. Earth was no longer the easy target they had assumed it to be. Whatever secrets this planet held, the Zorathians now realized they had underestimated it, and that mistake might cost them everything. This extended version builds suspense and intrigue while keeping the tone engaging and accessible. It introduces key themes of mystery and tension, setting the stage for the events to come. The Zorathian fleet had spent centuries conquering planets, their reputation as unstoppable invaders spreading fear across the galaxy. But now, for the first time in their history, they faced something that defied explanation. As the countdown to invasion reached its final moments, Earth's sky began to transform in a way no one, not even Commander Vrax, could have anticipated. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. High above the planet, the atmosphere shimmered like water disturbed by a gentle breeze. At first, the Zorathians dismissed it as some kind of atmospheric anomaly, perhaps a side effect of Earth's primitive attempts at weather manipulation. But then the shimmering grew more intense and cracks began to form in the very fabric of the sky itself. These weren't ordinary cracks. They glowed with an eerie light, pulsating like veins of molten gold. The fractures spread rapidly, splitting, open wide enough to reveal massive structures hidden within. One by one, colossal ships emerged from these rifts, descending into view with a grace that belied their sheer size. Each vessel was larger than any starship the Zorathians had ever encountered, their metallic hulls gleaming ominously under the light of the distant sun. Lieutenant Kale stumbled backward, his claws gripping the edge of the control panel as he stared at the holographic display. What is this?" he stammered, his voice trembling with a mix of awe and terror. Commander Vrax didn't respond immediately. His sharp eyes scanned the scene unfolding before him, trying to process what he was seeing. These ships weren't just large, they were impossibly advanced. Their sleek design suggested technology far beyond anything the Zorathians possessed, and their energy signatures radiated power on a scale that made his own fleet look like toys. But the most unsettling part wasn't the ships themselves, it was how they had appeared. The rifts in the sky seemed to defy the laws of physics, opening and closing as if the universe itself had been torn apart. And yet, there was no explosion, no chaos, no sign of destruction. It was as though Earth's defenders had simply willed these ships into existence. "This can't be real," Kale muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. "How could humans hide something like this? How could they build ships this big without us noticing?" Vrax clenched his jaw, his mind racing. He knew Kale's questions were valid, but they only added to the growing unease in his chest. Something about this situation felt wrong. The humans below were primitive, their technology laughably outdated compared to the Zorathians. There was no way they could have constructed such an armada on their own. Which meant someone, or something, else was involved. Before he could dwell on the implications, a new development snapped him back to reality. The human fleet, which had materialized seemingly out of nowhere, began moving into formation. The Star Destroyers positioned themselves strategically around Earth, creating a perfect defensive perimeter that left no gaps for the Zorathians to exploit. Every ship bristled with weapons, energy cannons, missile arrays, and other devices whose purposes were unknown but undoubtedly devastating. "They're surrounding us," Kale whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. "They've cut off our escape routes." Vrax nodded grimly. Despite the overwhelming odds, he refused to show fear in front of his crew. "Stay calm," he ordered, his voice steady despite the tension gripping his body. "We don't know what they're capable of yet. For all we know, this could be a bluff." But deep down, he doubted it. The precision and coordination of the human fleet suggested years, if not centuries, of preparation. Whoever controlled these ships knew exactly what they were doing, and they weren't afraid to use their full might if provoked. Then, just when the Zorathians thought things couldn't get worse, one of the Star Destroyers activated its communication systems. A single message blared across all frequencies, loud and clear. "You have entered restricted space. Withdraw immediately or face annihilation." The words echoed through the bridge of the flagship, freezing everyone in place. The tone was calm but firm, leaving no room for misinterpretation. This wasn't a plea or a negotiation. It was a warning. Kale turned to Vrax, his yellow eyes wide with panic. "What do we do, Commander? If we retreat now, we'll lose face in front of the Empire. But if we stay—" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. The unspoken implication hung heavy in the air. If they stayed, they might not survive. Vrax took a deep breath, forcing himself to think clearly. He glanced at the hologram again, studying the human fleet with a mixture of admiration and dread. Whoever these beings were, they weren't bluffing. The sheer scale of their firepower was undeniable, and the Zorathians' chances of victory were slim at best. "We wait," Vrax said finally, his decision firm. "For now, we observe. Let's see if they're willing to negotiate before making any rash moves." Kyle opened his mouth to protest but closed it quickly. He knew better than to argue with his commander, especially in a situation like this. Instead, he focused on monitoring the enemy fleet, searching for any weaknesses they might exploit. Meanwhile, aboard one of the Star Destroyers, a figure watched the Zorathians with quiet amusement. Dr. Elias Grant, humanity's unofficial ambassador, leaned back in his chair sipping coffee from a chipped mug. Despite the gravity of the situation, he looked completely relaxed, as if he dealt with alien invasions every day. "Think they got the message?" he asked casually, addressing the deep one standing beside him. The creature, tall and ethereal, with glowing blue skin, tilted its head slightly. "They understand the threat, yes. But pride often clouds judgment among conquerors." Elias chuckled, setting his mug down on the console. "Well, let's hope they're smart enough to listen. I'd hate to waste good coffee on blowing them up." The deep one didn't respond, its expression unreadable. It had chosen Elias specifically for this role because of his ability to remain calm under pressure. While others might have panicked or acted impulsively, Elias approached every challenge with a level-headedness that inspired confidence, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Back on the Zorathian flagship, the tension continued to mount. Vrax ordered his crew to maintain their position while attempting to establish communication with the humans. But every transmission went unanswered, further fueling their anxiety. "They're ignoring us," Kale growled, slamming his fist against the console in frustration. "Do they think they're better than us? Do they think we'll just slink away like cowards?" "No," Vrax replied, his voice low and measured. "They're testing us, seeing how we react. Remember, we're dealing with an enemy we know nothing about. Patience is our best weapon right now." As the standoff dragged on, the Zorathians found themselves trapped between two equally daunting options: retreat and admit defeat, or stand their ground and risk total annihilation. Neither choice was appealing, but Vrax knew they couldn't afford to act recklessly, not when the fate of their entire fleet, and possibly their empire, hung in the balance. Finally, after what felt like hours, movement came from the human fleet. One of the Star Destroyers broke formation and began drifting toward the Zorathians. Its massive frame cast a shadow over the smaller alien ships, dwarfing them completely. "They're approaching," Kyle exclaimed, his voice rising in alarm. "Should we fire?" "No," Vrax snapped, his tone sharp enough to silence any further protests. "Hold your positions. Let's see what they want." The destroyer slowed to a stop just outside the Zorathians' range, its weapons still powered down but ready to strike at a moment's notice. Then a smaller craft detached from its underside and flew toward the flagship. "They're sending a shuttle," Kyle observed, narrowing his eyes suspiciously. "Could it be a trap?" "It doesn't matter," Vrax replied, straightening his posture as the shuttle docked with their ship. "Prepare for boarding. And remember, we're dealing with an unknown force. Act accordingly." As the airlock hissed open and footsteps echoed down the corridor, the Zorathians braced themselves for whatever or whoever was coming. What they didn't expect was the sight that greeted them. A man in flip-flops, jeans, and a casual button-down shirt, holding a steaming cup of coffee. "Hello there," Elias said with a friendly smile, raising his mug in greeting. "Mind if I come in?" The Zorathians stared at him in stunned silence, unsure whether to laugh, scream, or run for their lives. The Zorathians stood frozen in place, their sharp claws twitching and their glowing eyes wide with disbelief. Commander Vrax was the first to recover, though his composure was visibly shaken. He studied the human who had just stepped aboard their ship, a man wearing flip-flops, sipping coffee and smiling as if he'd been invited to a casual backyard barbecue instead of an alien warship preparing for conquest. "Who are you?" Vrax asked finally, his deep voice laced with both confusion and suspicion. The man took another sip of his coffee before answering, his demeanor relaxed and almost playful. "Dr. Elias Grant," he said, extending a hand as though expecting a handshake. When Vrax didn't move, Elias shrugged and lowered his hand without missing a beat. "Astrophysicist, part-time diplomat, full-time coffee enthusiast, and you must be the folks trying to invade my planet." Lieutenant Kale growled low in his throat, stepping forward aggressively. "This is ridiculous. You come here dressed like some kind of primitive and you expect us to take you seriously? Do you even understand what's happening right now?" Elias raised an eyebrow, tilting his head slightly as if pondering the question. "Oh, I think I've got a pretty good idea," he replied calmly. "You show up uninvited, start poking around our skies, and then threaten to blow us. All up because we're not advanced enough to entertain you. Am I close?" Kale snarled, his claws flexing as if he were ready to tear the human apart. But before he could act, Vrax held up a hand, signaling for restraint. Though the situation was absurd, something about this man, this human, bothered him. There was a confidence in Elias's posture, a calm certainty that suggested he knew far more than he was letting on. "You're not in charge here," Vrax said firmly, addressing Elias, but also reminding his crew of their discipline. "If you're representing your species, then explain yourselves. How did you hide those ships? Who gave you access to such technology?" Elias chuckled softly, taking another sip of coffee before responding. "Ah, straight to the big questions, huh? Well, let me save you some time. You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me," Vrax growled, his patience wearing thin. Elias sighed dramatically, setting his mug down on a nearby console. "All right, fine. Here's the deal. Humans didn't build those ships, we found them, or rather they found us." There was a collective gasp from the Zorathian crew, followed by murmurs of disbelief. Vrax's expression darkened further. "Explain." "It's simple, really," Elias continued, leaning casually against the wall. "Turns out Earth isn't just home to surface dwellers like me. Beneath the crust there are civilizations older than anything you've ever encountered. They call themselves the Deep Ones. Super smart, super secretive, and super protective of us little guys up top. For centuries, they've been watching humanity evolve, waiting for the right moment to step in and help. Looks like today's the day. Kyle scoffed loudly, clearly unconvinced. You expect us to believe that nonsense? Ancient underground. Beings just handed you their entire fleet? Why would they do that? Elias grinned, clearly enjoying himself. Because they saw potential in us. Humans might be clumsy and loud and terrible at recycling, but we're also creative, resilient, and stubborn as hell. The Deep Ones figured we'd make decent neighbors someday, if we survived long enough to join the Galactic Party. So when you showed up looking all smug and murdery, they decided it was time to intervene. Vrax narrowed his eyes, his mind racing to process the information. It sounded preposterous, yet it explained so much. The sudden appearance of the Star Destroyers, the lack of orbital debris, the eerie calm surrounding Earth. If these Deep Ones truly existed, they were far more advanced than the Zorathians, capable of hiding their presence until the perfect moment. But one thing still puzzled him. Why send you? Vrax demanded. Why not speak through one of these Deep Ones? Elias shrugged, picking up his coffee mug again. They're busy people, or creatures, or whatever you want to call them. Plus, they figured sending someone relatable might make negotiations easier. You know, break the ice a little. Nothing says let's talk like a guy in flip-flops offering you a cup of joe. For a moment, silence filled the room. The Zorathians exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to proceed. This human was unlike anyone they'd ever met. His casual attitude clashed sharply with the overwhelming power of the fleet behind him. Was he bluffing, or was he telling the truth? Finally, Vrax spoke, his tone measured but firm. Even if what you say is true, it doesn't change the fact that we outnumber you. Our empire spans thousands of worlds. One planet, no matter how well defended, can't stand against us forever. Elias nodded thoughtfully, as if considering the point. Then he smiled, a mischievous glint in his eye. True enough. But here's the thing. You haven't seen everything we've got yet. Those ships out there, just the tip of the iceberg. Trust me. You don't want to find out what happens if things get ugly. To emphasize his point, Elias gestured toward the view screen, where the human fleet remained poised and ready. Every destroyer bristled with weapons, their energy cannons, humming faintly as if eager to fire. And besides, Elias added, his tone turning serious for the first time, you're forgetting something important. Humanity has been fighting its own battles for millennia. Wars, plagues, natural disasters. We've faced it all and kept coming back stronger. Now imagine what happens when you add interstellar tech to the mix. Spoiler alert. It gets messy. Vrax clenched his fists, torn between anger and admiration. This human had guts, he had to admit that. Even surrounded by superior forces, Elias carried himself with an air of quiet defiance that made him impossible to ignore. Let's say we believe you, Vrax said slowly. What do you propose we do? Elias grinned again, clearly pleased that they were finally talking. Simple, leave. Go back to wherever you came from and tell your bosses that Earth is off limits. Try anything funny and we'll make sure you regret it. End of story. Kyle stepped forward angrily, his voice rising. And what makes you think we'll listen to you? You're nothing but a primitive. Before Kale could finish his rant, a low rumble shook the ship. The lights flickered briefly and the view screen displayed a new image. One of the Star Destroyers firing a warning shot into empty space. The blast lit up the void like a miniature sun, leaving no doubt about its destructive potential. Elias glanced at the screen, then back at the aliens. That answer your question? Kale fell silent, his anger replaced by fear. Vrax, however, remained composed, though his resolve began to waver. He knew they couldn't win this fight. Not against odds like these. Very well, Vrax said, after a long pause. We will withdraw for now, but mark my words, this isn't over. Elias smiled, raising his coffee mug in a mock toast. Glad we could come to an understanding. Safe travels, Commander. Try not to drop by unannounced next time. As the Zorathians escorted Elias back to his shuttle, their minds raced with questions and doubts. Who were these Deep Ones, and how powerful were they really? Could humanity truly pose a threat to their empire? Back aboard the Star Destroyer, Elias returned to the bridge, where the Deep One awaited him. "How did it go?" the creature asked, its voice calm and melodic. Elias flopped into his chair, grinning widely. "Pretty well, I think. Gave them a good scare, made them question their life choices, and sent them packing, all while looking fabulous in flip-flops. Not bad for a day's work, huh?" The Deep One tilted its head, a hint of amusement in its glowing eyes. "You handled yourself admirably, Dr. Grant. Perhaps there is hope for your species after all." Elias laughed, taking another sip of coffee. "Hope? Nah. We're way past hope. From here on out, we're dealing in possibilities, big ones." As the Zorathian fleet retreated, their massive ships disappearing into the cold void of space, Earth's skies returned to their usual tranquility. The rifts that had opened to reveal the Star Destroyers closed seamlessly, leaving no trace of the cosmic standoff that had just occurred. To the billions of humans living on the surface, life continued as normal, unaware of the extraordinary events unfolding above them. But for those who knew the truth, the galaxy would never be the same again. Back aboard the lead Star Destroyer, Dr. Elias Grant leaned back in his chair, sipping the last dregs of his coffee with a satisfied grin. "Well, that was fun," he said aloud, addressing the Deep One standing nearby. "Think they'll stay away this time?" The creature tilted its head slightly, its glowing blue skin shimmering faintly under the ship's artificial lights. "It is unlikely they will attempt another invasion anytime soon. However, word of today's events will spread quickly. Other species will take notice of Earth's newfound power." Elias nodded thoughtfully, setting his empty mug aside. "Yeah, I figured as much. So what happens now? Do we just sit here and wait for the next alien armada to show up?" "No," the Deep One replied calmly. "We prepare. While humanity has proven itself capable of defending its home, there is still much work to be done. Your species must learn to navigate the complexities of interstellar politics if it hopes to survive in the wider universe." Elias raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Politics, huh? That sounds about as fun as herding cats. What does that involve exactly?" The Deep One gestured toward the view screen, which displayed a holographic map of the galaxy. Stars twinkled across the display, each one representing a system inhabited by intelligent life. Some were marked with symbols indicating alliances, trade routes, or conflicts. Others were blank, shrouded in mystery. "Earth now occupies a unique position," the Deep One explained. "Your planet is both powerful and unaligned, a rarity in the galactic community. Many will seek to form partnerships with you, hoping to gain access to your resources or your protector's technology. Others may view you as a threat and attempt to undermine your influence." Elias whistled softly, leaning forward to study the map. "So basically, everyone wants a piece of us. Great. Any advice on how to handle all that without starting World War III? Galaxy Edition?" The Deep One's expression remained unreadable, but there was a hint of amusement in its voice. "Diplomacy will be key. You must choose your allies carefully and avoid entangling yourselves in unnecessary disputes. Above all, remember that strength alone does not guarantee respect. Trust must be earned through consistent actions." Elias sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. "Sounds like a lot of work. Guess I'd better start brushing up on my negotiation skills." Meanwhile, news of Earth's sudden emergence as a galactic power began to ripple through the stars. The Zorathians, humiliated and defeated, returned to their empire with tails between their legs. Their leaders convened an emergency council to discuss the implications of the failed invasion, but whispers of the event spread far beyond their borders. On distant planets, alien races watched and waited, their reactions ranging from curiosity to outright fear. Some saw Earth's rise as an opportunity, others viewed it as a challenge to their dominance. Trade delegations, diplomatic envoys, and even covert operatives began making plans to visit the mysterious blue planet. One such delegation came from the Velari, a peaceful but highly influential species known for their role as mediators in interstellar disputes. Their ambassador, a graceful being named Lyran, arrived aboard a sleek silver vessel that docked at one of the star destroyers, orbiting Earth. Elias greeted her warmly, once again clad in his signature flip-flops and jeans. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Lyran, or should I say welcome to our little corner of the galaxy?" Lyran inclined her head gracefully, her luminous eyes studying Elias with quiet fascination. "Dr. Grant, it is an honor to meet you. We have heard much about your recent encounter with the Zorathians. Your actions have sparked considerable interest among the galactic community." Elias chuckled, scratching the back of his neck awkwardly. "Yeah, well, let's just say we're big fans of keeping our planet intact. No offense to the Zorathians, but they weren't exactly invited guests." Lyran smiled faintly, though her tone remained formal. "Indeed. My people are eager to establish relations with Earth. We believe that cooperation and mutual understanding can foster peace and prosperity for all species." "That's great to hear," Elias replied, genuinely pleased. "We're still figuring things out ourselves, but we're open to learning. Maybe you can help us understand the lay of the land, so to speak." Over the following days, Elias worked closely with Lyran and her team, exchanging information about Earth's culture, history, and aspirations. In return, the Velari shared valuable insights into the workings of the galactic community, including tips on navigating alliances, avoiding pitfalls, and recognizing potential threats. But not every visitor came with peaceful intentions. A few weeks after the Velari departed, another ship arrived. One belonging to the Krylos, a militaristic race infamous for their aggressive expansionism. Their ambassador, a hulking figure named Thalok, demanded an audience with Earth's representative. When Elias met him aboard the destroyer, Thalok wasted no time getting to the point. "We know of your alliance with the Deep Ones," he growled, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "Their technology interests us. Share it with us, and we will offer protection against future aggressors." Elias crossed his arms, his expression hardening. "Let me get this straight. You want us to hand over technology that doesn't belong to us in exchange for protection? That's rich." Thalok stepped closer, his towering frame casting a shadow over Elias. "Do not mistake kindness for weakness, human. Refuse, and you risk making enemies of the Krylos Empire." For a moment, tension crackled in the air. Then Elias smiled, a slow, confident grin that caught Thalok off guard. "Tell you what, Thalok, how about this instead? You leave us alone, and we won't sick our star destroyers on your precious empire. Sound fair?" Thalok's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. After a long pause, he turned and stormed out, leaving Elias to shake his head in disbelief. "You really enjoy poking the bear, don't you?" asked the Deep One, appearing beside him moments later. Elias shrugged, grabbing a fresh cup of coffee. "Hey, someone's got to keep these guys in line. Besides, it's kind of fun watching them squirm." Despite the occasional confrontations, Earth's reputation continued to grow. Word of its mysterious protectors and its unconventional diplomat spread throughout the galaxy, earning both admiration and caution. Trade agreements were proposed, cultural exchanges initiated, and tentative alliances formed. Behind the scenes, the Deep Ones monitored everything, ensuring that humanity's rise remained steady and controlled. They revealed only enough of their technology to help surface dwellers adapt to their new role without overwhelming them. As for Elias, he embraced his role as Earth's unofficial ambassador, traveling between star systems and meeting representatives from countless alien races. Whether negotiating treaties, mediating disputes, or simply sharing stories over cups of coffee, which had become surprisingly popular among extraterrestrials, he approached every challenge with humor and determination. And so, Earth took its first steps onto the galactic stage, not as conquerors but as equals. Guided by ancient allies and led by a man in flip-flops, humanity began carving out a place for itself among the stars. Months had passed since Earth's dramatic entrance into the galactic community, and the planet was no longer seen as a quiet backwater world. Instead, it had become a beacon of intrigue and caution for species across the stars. News of humanity's mysterious protectors, the deep ones, spread like wildfire, sparking debates, alliances, and rivalries. Some viewed Earth as a potential ally, others as a threat, and still others as an enigma waiting to be unraveled. Dr. Elias Grant, Earth's unlikely ambassador, found himself busier than ever. Between diplomatic meetings, trade negotiations, and cultural exchanges, he barely had time to enjoy his coffee, though he never went anywhere without it. His unorthodox approach to diplomacy had earned him a reputation as both a wild card and a peacemaker. While some aliens admired his casual demeanor and quick wit, others saw him as unpredictable, a man who could charm you one moment and call your bluff the next. But despite the growing attention, Elias remained grounded. He knew that Earth's newfound prominence came with risks, and he was determined to navigate them carefully. With the help of the Deep Ones, he worked tirelessly to ensure that humanity's rise would be steady and sustainable. One day, aboard the lead star destroyer orbiting Earth, Elias received an urgent transmission. It came from the Velari, the peaceful species he had met earlier. Ambassador Liren appeared on the view screen, her graceful features tinged with concern. "Dr. Grant," she began, her voice calm but serious, "we have reason to believe that certain factions within the Krylos Empire are planning to retaliate against Earth. Their leaders are frustrated by their previous failure and see your planet as a challenge to their dominance." Elias frowned, leaning forward in his chair. "Retaliate how? Another invasion?" Liren hesitated before responding. "Not directly. They may attempt sabotage or misinformation campaigns to weaken your position. Or worse, they could form alliances with other hostile races to isolate Earth politically." Elias sighed, rubbing his temples. "Great. Just what we needed. A galactic game of chess where everyone wants to take our queen." The Deep One, standing nearby, chimed in. "This is why trust must be earned gradually. You cannot afford to make enemies too quickly, nor can you rely solely on intimidation." Elias nodded, appreciating the wisdom. "All right, so what's the plan? We can't exactly hide under a rock until this blows over." Liren offered a suggestion. "Perhaps it is time for Earth to host its first interstellar summit. Invite representatives from various species to discuss shared challenges, resource management, security, and cooperation. A public display of unity could deter the Krylos from acting rashly." Elias raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "A summit, huh? That sounds ambitious. Think anyone will actually show up?" "They will," Liren assured him. "Curiosity about Earth runs high, and many wish to see your planet firsthand. Besides, the opportunity to address universal issues is too significant to ignore." After some deliberation, Elias agreed. The idea of hosting a summit appealed to him. It was bold, unconventional, and just crazy enough to work. With the support of the Deep Ones and the Velari, preparations began immediately. The summit took place several weeks later in a massive orbital station built specifically for the occasion. Designed by the Deep Ones, the station combined sleek, alien architecture with elements inspired by Earth's natural beauty. Waterfalls cascaded along transparent walls, holographic displays showcased Earth's diverse ecosystems, and seating arrangements were arranged in a circular pattern to promote inclusivity. Representatives from dozens of species arrived, each bringing their own customs and expectations. Some came eager to learn, while others arrived suspicious and guarded. Despite the mixed reactions, Elias greeted them all with his signature charm and a warm smile. "Welcome, everyone," he announced during the opening ceremony. "We're thrilled to have you here today. Whether you're curious about Earth, interested in forging new partnerships, or just here for the coffee, don't worry, we've got plenty. You've come to the right place. Let's talk, share ideas, and maybe even find ways to make the galaxy a better home for all of us." His words drew laughter and applause, breaking the ice and setting a positive tone for the event. Over the following days, delegates participated in discussions, workshops, and cultural demonstrations. Topics ranged from environmental sustainability to advanced technology sharing, with each session fostering collaboration and mutual understanding. But not everything went smoothly. Tensions occasionally flared, particularly during debates about resource allocation and territorial disputes. The Krylos representative, Thalok, made his presence known by challenging nearly every proposal Elias presented. "You speak of equality," Thalok sneered during one heated exchange. "But how can we trust humans when they refuse to share their protectors' secrets? Are you hiding something, Dr. Grant?" Elias leaned back in his chair, unfazed. "Let me clarify something. Thalok, the Deep Ones aren't hiding anything, they simply don't owe you anything. Their alliance with Earth is based on mutual respect, not obligation. If you want to build trust, maybe start by treating others with the same courtesy." Thalok bristled but said nothing further, retreating to sulk in silence. By the end of the summit, however, progress had been made. Several agreements were signed, including a pact to establish neutral zones for trade and exploration. Even Thalok grudgingly admitted that Earth's efforts to foster dialogue were commendable, if only because it prevented immediate conflict. As the delegates departed, Elias reflected on the event's success. Standing on the observation deck of the orbital station, he gazed out at the swirling blue orb below. "You did well, Dr. Grant," the Deep One said, joining him. "Today marks the beginning of Earth's journey, not as conquerors, but as contributors." Elias smiled, sipping the last of his coffee. "Yeah, I guess we're finally part of the club. Still feels weird knowing we've got a target on our backs." "It is the price of power," the Deep One replied. "But remember, true strength lies not in domination, but in connection. Humanity has much to offer the galaxy, as long as it remains true to itself." Elias nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew humanity wouldn't face them alone. With allies like the Deep Ones and friends among the stars, Earth had taken its rightful place among the cosmos. And as far as Elias was concerned, that was worth every cup of coffee and every pair of flip-flops he'd worn along the way.